get the economy moving again, and all of that happens with this one big beautiful bill.
Behind the Bill, a Flag Family Tax Bill Town Hall.
It was more than just a piece of legislation. It was the launching pad of Donald Trump's economic agenda for his second term. Officially called H.R. 1, the 2025 reconciliation bill was debated widely and hotly around the country due to its sweeping scope and alignment with President Trump's agenda. It navigated filibuster hurdles, passing 51-50 after Vice President J.D. Vance broke a Senate tie on July 4th. It was, and it is, nearly 900 pages of tax cuts, health care, welfare, defense, immigration, and the debt ceiling. We're here tonight to cut through the politics and talk about what this bill means to you and to the world around you. Hi, everybody. Steve Hallstrom here alongside Scott Hennen for this special 2-hour program. Between now and 8 p.m., we're going to touch on some of the issues that have the biggest impacts on North Dakota, Minnesota, and South Dakota. We'll have several guests to help us break it down as well, and we welcome your questions tonight as well. Studio@flagfamily.com is the place to send them, or you can use the text line at 701-237-1590. Scott, a lot to talk about. We could probably go 6 hours on this bill here tonight, but should be a good couple hours.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And we've been noodling in one version of this from literally days after July 4th when this passed, because felt like we were drinking from a fire hose trying to understand what was all in it. And we do this for a living, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm not even sure members of Congress did. I think actually one of the biggest failures of the Republican apparatus and the Trump administration on down is they've done, in my mind, a subpar job of explaining this bill during the whole sausage-making process, if you will, and even after. Because as is wont to do with the Trump administration, they've moved to the next thing already, right? And now it's Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in Alaska. So I get that, and that's, I think, a good thing because they're moving swiftly. But I think they do, if they want to win the midterms, they being the Republicans, and obviously Donald Trump does, but the House and Senate majorities are up in 2026. Mm-hmm. And the only way they will not lose at least one of the houses, which the House is obviously razor thin, is if people understand and feel what is in the one big beautiful bill. So our job, I think, Steve, is to talk to some people who, in their particular area of expertise, their industries, everything else, they tell that story. They tell that to their employees, and the employees tell their families, and you start ignoring what's on fake news and paying attention to what really is in it. But we're all learning this together.
There's a lot here. Let's give a little preview of what we're going to be talking about here tonight on the show. We're going to talk about energy issues. This is such a big issue across the state of North Dakota. We'll be visiting with Allison Ritter, the executive director of the Western Dakota Energy Association, coming up here in just a few minutes. We're going to talk about the debt ceiling being raised as well and what that means. We'll also talk to Jeff Zuger, CEO of Harveststone Low Carbon Partners, and he's also a director of the North Dakota Ethanol Producers Association Board, which represents 6 North Dakota ethanol plants. We'll talk about border security and immigration funding as well tonight. We'll visit with Mark Wagner, founder and owner of ND Estate Services. What does all this mean for the future of your family, some of the tax impacts there? And we're going to visit with Levi Otis, Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy at Ellingson Companies. We're going to talk about some of the ag and tax impacts of what's been called the One Big Beautiful Bill as well. There's also a conversation to be had about the 100% depreciation and expensing that means an awful lot to businesses and how they can deduct the cost of certain assets, so we'll get into that as well. A lot of conversation has been going about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and what has now been called the senior deduction as well. So we're going to give you all the details on that you'll need to know to figure out what this is going to mean for you come tax time. We'll talk Medicaid as well in the program tonight, and then we're going to have a little chat with Andrew Nias from the American Federation for Children on some school choice provisions in the bill as well. We'll outline the permanent extension of the 2017 tax cuts. There might be more here than you remember as well, so we'll go through that for you and kind of be reminded of what good policy there was for Americans in that part of it as well. Before we get to the end of our program, we expect to hear from Michelle Fischbach, our Congresswoman from Minnesota, Congressional District 7, Julie Fedorchuk as well. So we got a lot to do here on the program tonight. And Scott, a lot of what we're going to be talking about has to do with energy because it is such a big part of who we are and what we do here.
And I would argue that energy was probably the biggest winner as a sector. as part of our economy, because there's many tentacles to that for sure. But I'll say the fact checker rather on my bold statement that energy is one of the biggest winners is our next guest, Allison Ritter, who is known to many in political circles in North Dakota. She worked with Lynn Helms at the Department of Mineral Resources. She's worked for a lot of consulting and PR companies, and now the Western Dakota Energy Association is blessed to have her leading that organization. Allison, thanks for joining us.
Scott and Steve, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. You've got a great lineup from the sounds of it, and I'm just thrilled to be batting leadoff. It's my favorite place to be in the lineup, so I'm happy to be here and talk about energy and talk about this bill. What a way to celebrate the 4th of July than to have a bill that is doing so many great things for not only the American people, but people here in North Dakota. We've always been an energy leader, but the one big beautiful bill kind of takes that to another level. There's so many things that it does. And if we look at what it does, it owns land for federal development, it rolls back regulations and fees, it rebalances energy incentives. And that's a big thing, especially when it comes to carbon capture and enhanced oil recovery, which is where North Dakota really needs to go in our future if we're going to continue to benefit from the great natural resources that we have here in our state.
One question I want to ask every panelist with us tonight, Steve, is, and this is a challenge, even members of Congress have said, please don't do this to me, but if you had to pick...
thanks.
Yeah, if you had to pick one thing and only one thing to say, this will have the biggest impact on us listening, North Dakotans especially, obviously, because you are a North Dakota organization at the Western Dakota Energy Association, what would be the one thing?
Well, I think that showed itself yesterday when we had a visit from Secretary Wright, who visited with our state's congressional delegation, and they were at the Energy and Environmental Research Center in Grand Forks, and they really spoke about cracking the code 2.0. That was the theme of that meeting, and it goes back to what this bill does for carbon capture and EOR in the state, and that's put the use of CO2 on the same playing field as if you were just to capture the carbon with the 45Q tax credit, and makes it $85 a ton, and makes it more, a better incentive, I guess, for oil companies to get that gas from our large stationary sources, which we have so much CO2 in the state that for companies to capture and utilize. The thing that blows my mind about our EOR potential in the state is that even though we do have coal-fired power plants in the state that produce this CO2, we're still not going to produce enough what we need to unlock the full EOR benefits to enhance our oil production. And so when you look at what this bill does, I'd say that's the big thing for especially my association members that are oil, gas, and coal producing counties, is unlock the benefits of carbon capture and EOR.
By the way, just to give you some brownie points, Governor Armstrong answered that question identical to you. So you you crushed it. You crushed it for sure, which is pretty cool. I do want to talk to the listeners who don't know the energy industry as well as you do, but explain EOR and explain when that is, for lack of a better term, actually able to be deployed in North Dakota to make a difference, related to, okay, now the incentive is you don't have to put it down a hole to make the most money or get a bigger tax credit. You can actually utilize it. That's a win. You're absolutely right. But when will that win be realized? Right.
And our EERC is just an absolute gem and just such a resource for our state to have someone who looks at our major industries and how we can capitalize and make those better in our state. And right now we're taking CO2 and pumping it to Canada, and they are injecting it down hole in their aging wells, and they are getting more oil out of the ground from the CO2. And we're not doing that here yet. We're still working on unlocking the code. I know that the EERC has some pilot projects that they are launching to crack the code in the Bakken, but essentially what EOR does is you put the CO2 down downhole. It pushes that otherwise tight oil out that we haven't been able to access just yet. And now you're making me go back to my days of being with Lynn Helms and be a petroleum engineer. I'm not, but in layman's terms, when we start producing our Bakken wells, once they're hydraulically fractured, they produce very high amounts, but it tails off very quickly and tails for a very, very, very long time. And so if we want to extend and get 5 more billion barrels of oil out of the ground, we've got to put something down there that's going to move it and push it to the surface. And the beauty of our coal industry and our oil industry working together is that coal has this, what some people think is a byproduct or a waste. We see it as a beneficial use to get that additional oil out of the ground.
One other thing we should probably do before Steve jumps in here is explain what the Western Dakota Energy Association does. What is your function? Who do you advocate for?
Exactly. That's a great point, Scott. So the Western Dakota Energy Association advocates for counties, cities, and schools in the oil, gas, and coal producing counties of Western North Dakota. And really, it's my job to advocate on their behalf and work in hand with industry to make sure that our counties and cities and schools are getting the revenue they need to function and have good schools, good roads, have their governments be able to function. And so it's really up to me to go to the Capitol during the legislature and keep track of things in the interim, of course, the policies that matter, the gross production tax, the coal conversion tax, making sure that those go back to the counties because there are impacts that are very different from the rest of the state, making sure that, like I said, our roads are taken care of, our schools are up to speed and in a 21st century learning environment. Those are all things that I advocate for as the executive director of the Western Dakota Energy Association. And really keeping our communities strong. One of the things that really attracted me to this position was that these industries keep North Dakota's rural communities thriving and keep them growing and just absolutely from when I took over at oil and gas, when I started working at oil and gas, North Dakota's population was on a decline, and insert the oil industry, and our population is growing and our communities are growing, and it keeps vibrant communities right here in North Dakota where people want to live and work. And
I would just, Steve, you talk a lot about the Fargo budget, which is in a deficit right now of what, $6 million? What's the Fargo budget deficit? It's significant.
Six point something million.
Yeah, it's not small change. It's small in the percentage of the total budget, but they're right now going through a challenge. And while Allison represents the Western Dakota Energy Association, I would argue oil and gas benefits Fargo more than any other city in North Dakota. So is that fair, Allison?
It does, right. We put out a tax study every year or every 2 years, that shows the communities that benefit and the amount of money that goes to those communities. And when you look at the eastern side of the state, the darker shaded usually indicates that those communities receive more money. And Cass County and Grand Forks, they are just about the same colors as our Montreal, Williams. And they do benefit with things like the water projects, schools, building infrastructures at universities. So they absolutely benefit from what happens out west.
In addition to Western Dakota Energy Association being a sponsor of the program tonight, we want to say a big thank you to the North Dakota Ethanol Council, Ellingson Companies, J&M Truck Sales, ND Estate Services, Gevo, and Theraldson Companies for their sponsorship of the program tonight. Allison, I want to ask you a little bit about some of the phase-outs for some of the non-traditional energy sources as we might look at them here in North Dakota. We have a phase-out of some of the what are called clean or green energy investments, tax credits, and production tax credits. And there is also the peeling back of some of the EV tax credits that were part of the bill as well. Now, there's anytime that something happens legislatively, it's good for somebody, it's bad for somebody. I want to ask you these two particular things on the industry level and on the consumer level. Are those things good for North Dakota, do you think?
Well, I think when you look at phasing out the tax credits, what it's actually doing, while it is phasing it out, it's boosting proven, reliable sources like coal, oil, gas, and even nuclear and hydro. And so it rolls back those subsidies for wind and solar that they really have tilted the market. And so this really lets our reliable energy sources like coal, oil, gas, nuclear, it allows them to compete fairly again. And we know that our coal-fired plants, they weren't designed to go up and down with the system, and if there's more wind and less wind. And so by rolling back these subsidies, putting them on a level playing field, it just makes our coal-fired power plants operate more reliably. And of course, that means making the grid more reliable, and also it supports jobs in our state. I think having that certainty, whether you're oil, gas, or coal, that goes a long way in knowing that you have an administration that is fighting for you and fighting for your industry. Believe it or not, I have parents who are Democrats, and they did not vote for the Trump administration. And I've been telling them for years, if you vote against these policies or vote for this administration, you're voting me out of a job. I've been trying to hit that home for them for a long time. Having these be make that much better for energy industry in North Dakota.
All right, we're having a little technical difficulty there with the video link for Allison. Allison, can you hear us okay still? Let's
I can hear you.
Keep rolling here with this for a little bit.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, it seems like we've reset here well. I want to ask you about the oil and gas leases. This was a big concern of Governor Burgum when he was North Dakota's governor, and Kelly Armstrong has had the same concern now as North Dakota's governor. Doug Burgum is, of course, in the administration in D.C. right now. And this whole conversation of the leases that were supposed to be permitted on federal land, those were not happening during the previous administration. And now we have the mandate of 30 new oil and gas lease sales over 15 years on federal lands and offshore areas, including one in the Gulf of Mexico. What does that mean to North Dakota that now we've got an administration that seems to be a little bit more conducive to these lease auctions being held as scheduled?
Well, I think that just provides the certainty that they're looking for. I was listening to Jonathan Fortner this week, and he was talking about leases, federal coal leases, and how they sat in the Biden administration for the entire administration and finally got fast-tracked within the last few months of the administration. You can't have that when you're trying to provide a reliable power source. And so it's hard to get over saying Governor Burgum, right? You said that for so long. So switching to Secretary Burgum feels a little different. But Secretary Burgum has come in and has really fast-tracked those processes and said, we need to get this done within 90 days. We need to cut through all of the BS, and we need to make sure that we're getting these out there so we can provide that certainty. And it forces the government to hold these lease sales, so we're not waiting months or years, because so much can change with capital investment in months and years. And so they need to have that certainty right away.
I was going to say, Steve, though, what she just said is breathtaking. And you and I heard Doug Burgum speak in Oklahoma City at the Harold Hamm Institute, and he said a version of what she just said. So we go from there is no leases to, okay, you can lease, but we're going to slow walk the leases, so it will stretch it out forever. So essentially, under the Biden administration, there was no leases for federal lands. And then the new secretary comes in and says, by the way, we'll do this in 90 days.
Yes. That
is like a massive sea change. I have one last question before you, and Steve may as well, Allison, before you go. But the question would be this. If you had to list the biggest, and we have many of these in North Dakota, the biggest winners, in other words, is it oil and gas? Is it coal? Is it ethanol? Or the biggest losers from the one big beautiful bill, wind, whatever. We don't have much solar, but give me the winners and losers quick before we let you go.
I think, and what I have learned as I've taken over this position, that I think the biggest winners in this it's not an industry. It's not source of fuel over the other. We really have to look at it as the people that benefit from this, right? By knowing that we're going to have a reliable source of power, that we're going to unleash American energy dominance and have a sense of national security because we're producing the oil and gas that we need here at home, lower gas prices, lower electricity rates, all of the things that impact the consumer. That's who the real winner is in this, in my mind. If I had to pick a loser, I guess I don't know if I could pick a loser in this scenario. I know there was a lot of consternation from Elon Musk over the whole EV mandate being thrown out the window. I fight it every day. I said, I have to convince my family that this is the administration to go with. My brother drives a Tesla, and he drives a Tesla, and he's a big nuclear guy. He thinks that, well, let's just put solar panels in the desert, but that doesn't work. You have to be close to the source. There's transmission issues and getting on the grid, right? Yeah. So I guess if I had to pick losers, it would be EVs, but I don't know that I'm ever going to drive an EV just personally, but the biggest winner we have to say is the people, because we're going to have national security, energy independence, and keeping jobs and keeping our communities prosperous. Those are the winning things that we need to focus on.
Sounds good. Allison, we appreciate you being here with us. Thank you for helping sponsor the program here tonight, too, from the Western Dakota Energy Association. Great perspective from an insider in the industry. We really appreciate you giving us some time tonight.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
You got it. Take care. Well, we'll continue the energy conversation coming up in just a few minutes with Jeff Zuger from Harveststone Low Carbon Partners. But, Scott, I think we need to talk a little bit about the debt ceiling as well. It's one of the big things that happened during the passage of this bill. It raised the debt ceiling by $5 trillion, and what that means is the borrowing limit from Congress went up from $36.1 trillion to $41.1. The debt ceiling is a cap set by Congress on the total amount of debt the Treasury can issue. And what this adjustment allowed is for the Treasury to get sufficient borrowing capacity to meet the needs of the country with the spending that's planned and will be taking place here over the next 10 years or so. Some say it's possible, even likely, that the government will need it because, according to some projections, there could be as much as $4.1 trillion added in total debt. And Scott, this has been a really interesting debate going on in economic circles because on paper, yes, tax cuts, you can see that there is no ifs, ands, or buts. That is a quote-unquote cost to the federal government and its revenues. However, there is the Larry Kudlow camp and the Art Laffer camp who says if you do this and if you have these cuts to the taxes of individuals and businesses as well, you're going to have so much economic activity generated that you will make up that. So you will not need to have that $4 trillion or whatever that is for a long time, but you might need it temporarily until all of this can kick in.
Yeah, I think you described it perfectly. The only thing I would say is I don't think there's a mechanism in government, certainly in Congress, to adequately assess how much revenue will come as a result of policy change. I would argue this is a no-brainer because we saw what had happened in Reagan's years. John Kennedy cut taxes, right, as a Democrat, and certainly George W. Bush did.
Tax cuts, too.
And guess what? The mother of all tax policy came in the first Trump administration, that 2017 10-year tax plan, or whatever it was. It was 10 years, right? 2017 it passed. And so whatever. My point is, they all said the sky was going to fall then because, oh my gosh, you're going to balloon the deficit and everything else. Now, we did balloon the deficit. Unfortunately, that became as a result of COVID and more spending, but the revenues did increase way more than they said they were going to. So I don't know that we know the answer to your yin or yang related to this, but I will tell you, number one, I don't think all that spending is going to happen. And number two, I don't think they did the math correctly on even if it did, here's how much is on the revenue side. Last thing I'll say about this is Secretary Doug Burgum has said very clearly, everybody laments the debt. And they should, because that side of the ledger sheet is ugly right now. Say it goes to $41 trillion and you're still bleeding whatever we're bleeding every year in a deficit and adding to that. He's right. That is the spending problem that we have. just on, and most of that's entitlements, and that's a whole nother show. But what he says nobody includes on the asset side is all of the resources we have that can be used for the American taxpayer, and that connects to what Allison was saying.
Yeah, and if I play devil's advocate for the sake of a good conversation here on the program, every time you do a tax mechanism like this where you extend some cuts or you put new cuts in, you're doing it with an entirely different set of variables. Whatever happened, whatever the situation was during Kennedy and Reagan and Bush administration, you're dealing with a different world today in 2025, and exactly how this pans out, nobody really knows. There's a lot of theory out there, but I think it's wise for us to consider that past history. I've seen the same numbers that you have, and at one time I had a number at the top of my head about what that generated in economic activity when the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act came in, and there was some benefit there as well. But I do think it's going to be sort of a matter of time until we realize how these particular tax cuts and this set of answers will affect our economy and the amount of money coming into the government in a brave new world of 2025, a post-COVID world, and certainly there are some variables there.
The only thing I'd add to that is Donald Trump has made the argument that tariffs are going to contribute to bringing down the deficit and ultimately the debt, and even to the point of, what seems like crazy talk now to say, well, maybe we don't need income taxes, maybe we don't need an IRS because of all of those points. And so far he's been proven right, because we are flipping the equation on how much revenue is coming in versus how much is going out. So to this early have an impact on the deficit says I like our chances in this one.
Time will tell. When we come back on the Tax Bill Town Hall, we'll dig into the impacts on North Dakota's ethanol industry and tell you how the bill provides for more border security and immigration enforcement as well. That's next on WDAY and the Flag.
Are wet spots in your fields holding back your yield potential? Since 1970, Ellingson has been the trusted name in agricultural drainage solutions, and they're right here in the Red River Valley. With over 50 years of experience, Ellingson knows the value of proper water management. They offer expert design, installation, remote monitoring, and a dedicated in-house service team to keep you running strong. Call today to schedule your complimentary consultation, 701-893-9030. Ellingson, 701-893-9030.
Farmers and ranchers, I got a deal for you. If you're looking for the best and largest selection of rust-free trucks, J&M Truck Sales Fargo has them. If you need a tandem, triple, or quad-axle grain truck, J&M Truck Sales has them. Check out the rust-free Kenworth 880s with the wet kits. J&M has quality products, fair prices on all truck and trailer parts, too. You can trust J&M Truck Sales Fargo. Call now, 701-282-2260 or jnmtrucksales.net.
This is Mark Wagner with ND Estate Services. Mainly, my job here is to help educate families on what your kids are going to have to go through someday. We show you how to avoid that probate at death, eliminate that legal guardianship when you're incapacitated, save taxes for your family, but most of all, how you can have that peace of mind for a peaceful, private family settlement. Call us today, 701-318-0908. We'll talk to you soon.
Hi, I'm Allison with the Western Dakota Energy Association. Our job is to look out for the economic and social interests of cities, counties, and school districts in the energy-producing region of our state. WDEA is at the Capitol every day during the legislative session, testifying on issues important to our members in the West. Our communities need strong infrastructure, safety, and schools, and we're working to deliver. We also do our best to keep members informed through our weekly newsletter and on social media. Learn more about the Western Dakota Energy Association at ndenergy.org.
Did you know North Dakota's 6 ethanol plants pump over $1.7 billion into our economy every year? Most are in towns of fewer than 2,500 people, bringing an average of 57 jobs and $6.4 million in annual payroll to rural communities. They turn half of our state's corn crop into clean, homegrown fuel, livestock feed, and more. That's big impact from small-town roots. Support North Dakota farmers, communities, and cleaner air. Choose ethanol. The North Dakota Ethanol Council. Fueling North Dakota. Powering the state.
Changes are happening at breakneck speed from Washington to Main Street. With the added volatility and uncertainty, how do you make sense of it all? It is important to have an investment strategy that adapts and takes advantage of this market movement, and even more important, that you have an overall financial plan to tell you if you are on the right track. That is what we do at Collins & Kronk. Let's talk about all that is going on and build a plan you can stick with. Call Collins & Kronk today, 701-235-0119.
Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Collins & Kronk is not a broker-dealer and is independent of RJFS.
Stuck in the weeknight slump? Break up that humdrum routine at Sweet Shots in Fargo with live music every Thursday on the Galaxy Glass Rooftop Terrace. Unwind with happy hour from 3:30 to 6:30 Monday through Friday on the rooftop or inside DJ's Lounge. On Monday, get half-price pasta and $15 beer buckets. Tuesday is $4 tacos. Wednesday, the $10 True American Burger Basket. And Thursday, there's $13 two-topping pizzas. So ditch those boring nights and discover your new go-to spot. Head to sweetshots.com and check out what's happening. Sweet Shots, it's gonna be sweet.
On this vote, the bill is passed.
One big, beautiful bill. But what's really inside the massive new tax law?
We've got to get the economy moving again, and all of that happens with this one big, beautiful bill.
Behind the Bill, a Flag Family Tax Bill Town Hall.
Welcome back to the 2025 Reconciliation Bill Town Hall. We call it the Tax Bill Town Hall for short. President Trump would call it the One Big Beautiful Bill Town Hall. We didn't ask him, Scott, if he wanted to jump on the program tonight. That was a miss on our part.
It's kind of a ball drop. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
I think he's a little busy flying to Alaska. I don't know, but we're going back to the White House in September, so we'll have a chance to maybe ask him then.
We are pleased to have so many great sponsors joining us to make this broadcast possible here tonight. I want to say thank you to the Western Dakota Energy Association, the North Dakota Ethanol Council, Ellingson Companies, J&M Truck Sales, ND Estate Services, Gevo, and Theraldson Companies. And speaking of the North Dakota Ethanol Council, we're excited to have on the program right now Jeff Zuger, CEO of Harvestone Low Carbon Partners, which owns 2 ethanol plants, Blue Flint in Underwood and Dakota Spirit in Spiritwood. Jeff is also a director on the North Dakota Ethanol Producers Association Board, which represents 6 North Dakota ethanol plants. Mr. Zuger, welcome to the program. Thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
There's been a lot of conversation about ethanol. Certainly in our part of the world, it's such a big story where energy and agriculture come together. As you watch the process of the tax bill, the reconciliation bill play out, what were some of the things that you were pumping your fist about, and what were some of the things you were shaking your head about?
Sure. So for us, there were a couple of really important pieces in the bill, primarily around carbon capture and storage and how we treat U.S. feedstocks, corn in particular, in the ethanol production industry. So we ended up coming out of the final bill with quite a few wins for our industry that we'd be happy to walk through. But along the way, that it looked like we were going to see some things a little bit better at one time, and then some things that maybe were a little bit of a threat, like transferability and 45Z clean fuel production credits. But overall, we're really pleased as an industry and as North Dakota ethanol producers with the form that the bill was finalized in.
Was One Big Beautiful Bill beautiful for corn farmers in our state?
You know, I think it will be. So there's a couple of things that we gained in the One Big Beautiful Bill. Under the previous Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018, there was carbon capture and storage. 45Q tax credits were created, and that really set the course for example, Red Trail on our plant and many others to advance carbon capture and storage, and that was enhanced under the Inflation Reduction Act, and then further enhanced under One Big Beautiful Bill. And a couple of the things under One Big Beautiful Bill for 45Q were enhanced oil recovery or beneficial use, expanding the amount of the credit. So we think longer term that'll be good for oil in North Dakota and good for sustainability of the plants in North Dakota. And then 45Z was the other piece. 45Z is a clean fuel production credit. And in it, we actually extended the credit. It went through 2027. And now under One Big Beautiful Bill, it extends through 2029 and removed some of the things that were penalties for corn production in the United States. There's always been this indirect land use concept where we're penalizing corn and perhaps giving priority to sugarcane ethanol. And they removed that, which is really good for U.S. corn farmers. And then also brought in a provision that we believe will allow us to help farmers monetize climate smart, if you will, ag practices. I don't know if that's exactly the right term, but ag practices that are viewed as more environmentally friendly and that potentially will allow us to partner with farmers in our area and help them monetize those farming practices if in fact it's good for their farm.
Jeff, I have a couple of questions for you, but appreciate you joining us. I think you've forgot more about ethanol and carbon than any of us will ever know, so we appreciate the expertise. We're having a little trouble hearing you, so I don't know if you can get it a little closer to the screen and the microphone, but that
Sure,
would be a little helpful. No problem. I've asked everybody what the most important thing is in this bill for the industry, and you've gone through obviously a couple of things, and I think I want to start with the fact that when you say 45Q and 45Z, while I understand, and I think a lot of people do that follow this industry closely, know that they relate to tax policy, but and people understand, I think also in North Dakota that in my mind it would be similar to like what the wind industry was given at some time in the way of a tax treatment. That was called the production tax credit. But do me a favor, just like I'm a fifth grader, explain 45Q and Z in the form of what exactly you're talking about there.
Sure, Scott. Can you hear me any better now?
A little bit, yep, just as close as you can. That's great. Go ahead.
All right. So 45Q is a tax credit that is tied to sequestration of CO2, so permanently storing carbon dioxide, and or beneficial use of carbon dioxide. So converting carbon dioxide into fuels, converting carbon dioxide into fertilizer. So 45Q, previous to the One Big Beautiful Bill, had tax credit levels that were lower than they are today. They were enhanced under the Inflation Reduction Act, but what primarily came out of One Big Beautiful Bill was previously under the Inflation Reduction Act, beneficial use, enhanced oil recovery, converting CO2 into fuels was given a $60 per ton tax credit. So you get a tax credit against your federal tax obligation. And carbon sequestration and storage was an $85 per ton tax credit. So those credits were enhanced for beneficial use under One Big Beautiful Bill. And then 45Z is a clean fuel production credit for renewable-based fuels with varying feedstocks. So 45Z came into place under the Inflation Reduction Act, and it was a policy that was good through 2027. It went for 3 years, from January 1st, 2025 through the end of 2027. And under the One Big Beautiful Bill, it was extended to 2029, which was really good for our industry. And then also did away again with this indirect land use. So 45Z clean fuel production credit takes into account farm practices all the way to tailpipe emissions for renewable fuel. So when you say that you're penalizing corn for an indirect land use, meaning if you grow corn, land is torn up in a rainforest somewhere in Brazil, so now we're going to charge 6 more points to your life cycle carbon score. This administration was proactive in saying, no, that's not what happens. That's not reality. And we're going to do away with that. So that was one of the positive pieces with 45Z. And again, 45Z, clean fuel production credit that is tied to the production of a clean fuel over the life cycle of that fuel.
The other thing I want to ask you, just again, as a fifth grader would say it, they would say, carbon is how we breathe. Carbon is how plants grow. So why in the world would you want to put carbon in the ground? They might say that makes sense if you're trying to enhance oil recovery. I get it. You're using it for something, but why would you just store it? I know that a lot of that is influenced by the policy you just described, but there's been this whole debate over safety and pipelines, and the whole space has gotten really nasty, I guess is the word I'd use, and a bunch of lawyers trying to scare people. And, you know, we don't need to get into that today, but my point is there's a lot of landowners right now that 2 years ago might have said, sure, Jeff, how can we help? And now they're saying, no way, never, over my dead body. Why are they saying that?
Well, I think it's why we say that is perhaps you don't understand the safety elements associated with long-term permanent storage of CO2. So I think there's some real benefits with demonstrating carbon capture and storage as it relates to long-term enhanced oil recovery. So there's an incentive to do this so that we put in place, we invest tens to hundreds of millions of dollars at our facilities to put in carbon capture equipment that effectively compresses the CO2 into liquid form where it can be permanently stored subsurface, or it could go into enhanced oil recovery, which I think is the long-term opportunity here. But why would somebody want to do this? It ensures the sustainability of our facilities. So our facilities gain a tax credit, but more importantly, we lower the carbon intensity of our fuel because the market is asking for lower carbon intense fuels. So if we want to be sustainable long-term and ensure that we can continue to convert renewable feedstocks such as corn and soybeans into renewable fuels, we need to continue to lower the carbon intensity. These incentives help us with the risk that is associated with the investments that we make, and also help demonstration of the technologies. It's very common, as you pointed out, in emerging technologies to have a tax credit to help support these higher risk investments that are associated with the return on those technologies.
And I always say, and this is a little bit of history, but remember when Ed Schaefer was governor in 1993 to 2000, Ed Schaefer literally went before the legislature and testified for some of these same type of tax credits to be utilized in North Dakota to incentivize more drilling that was not economically viable for these companies to explore what more we could get out of the ground. And if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't have the renaissance we have with the Bakken. So I know tax credits are kind of a dirty word sometimes, and people call them corporate welfare and everything else. And honestly, in the case of wind, they went on forever and we're not supposed to. In the case of ethanol and even the whole carbon space, you didn't know if they were going to go away in this bill. So there's been very little certainty to be able to invest in that regard. But anybody out there that says, well, why should I pay for it? You're actually paying pennies to get $100 bills ultimately as the average taxpayer when it comes to what comes back to your companies, Jeff. Am I right?
That's correct, Scott. And it's not just the ethanol industry or the renewable fuel industry. This can help ensure that in future administrations or future policies that drive again towards carbon reduction, that coal-fired power plants can be sustained and they can lower their life cycle carbon emissions. There was a tremendous amount of pressure put on power plants to comply with carbon reduction efforts, and we saw many plants shut down across the country, and saw the plant that we're tied to threaten to shut down Coal Creek Station. And the projects that we're doing are demonstrating that these carbon capture and storage can be done. We can safely, permanently store this. And if future regulatory environments or future markets want lower carbon electrons or lower carbon traditional fuels, we can separate CO2 and we can put it into the ground and permanently store it and reduce the life cycle carbon intensity of these alternative energies, traditional energy forms, not just renewables.
I have a couple questions on the ethanol front, but I want to come back for a minute to the CO2 because the ethanol plant is the source of the CO2 in the case of Jeff's plants. Same thing with Tharaldson and Castleton and Red Trail and Richardson. And last I checked, by the way, all of those are in small towns. And basically, same thing with the coal plants. So basically, this is about rural America more than anything. And I always make the case this way that we should refer to the carbon that comes off an ethanol stack, if you will, Jeff, or is coming from a coal stack, or is coming from, who knows where. We're not talking about man-made carbon. We're talking about industrial carbon. So even if you are of the opinion that it doesn't matter how much carbon we burp into the air, it doesn't do what they say it's going to do, why the heck wouldn't we reduce industrial carbon if the greater good is enhancing fossil fuels and other things to extend our life cycle to generate more revenue? What the heck do we have to lose would be my question. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. I think these are really important things long term because the markets at times are asking for these. And previously to this administration, there was a lot of just discussion about how are we going to lower the life cycle carbon intensity of traditional fuels, renewable fuels. But the worldwide market still is looking for these things. And one of the emerging things in our industry is sustainable aviation fuel. So when you think about 100 billion gallon a year aviation fuel market that could potentially be 50% renewable based, that allows for so if we reduce the carbon intensity of ethanol by doing carbon capture and storage, for example, it now qualifies as feedstock around the world to convert that ethanol molecule into a sustainable aviation fuel, a longer chain carbon molecule. And that extends the opportunity for the farming communities and also helps us provide additional solutions for traditional based jet fuel.
And you know what's interesting about that? I think Senator Kevin Cramer coined the phrase that, he's long sort of, okay, I hear from the oil and gas guys, I hear from the coal guys, I hear from the ethanol guys. And he said, I think hell is frozen over because all of these organizations, all these sectors now actually are playing together for the benefit of others. And especially it's been oil against ethanol saying, I don't want to put X percent of ethanol in my thing. But explain, Jeff, related to sustainable aviation fuel, number one, when you talk about that market, you're talking about planes from all around the world that are using sustainable aviation fuel. And whether you like it, Steve, or I like it, if Delta Airlines is headquartered in Minnesota and they fly around the globe, they want a lower carbon score on their fuel, okay? And they do because, otherwise woke people won't fly on their planes. And that market for our corn industry, for our ethanol industry, is an absolute game changer, and it benefits, obviously, oil as well. So I think that, again, understanding all of this and realizing how it will impact you is pretty extraordinary. Jeff, we have a couple minutes left. Anything else you wanted to cover today?
Well, maybe the other piece that One Big Beautiful Bill did was kind of protect the U.S. feedstocks for things like sustainable aviation fuel and renewable-based fuel. Up until that bill passed, Brazil was going to eat our lunch as it relates to providing ethanol for a feedstock for SAF. This bill says if you're going to produce renewable fuels, the feedstocks have to come from U.S., Canada, or Mexico. So it was a huge blow to Brazil, who's long had tariffs on the products that we send to them, meaning ethanol, and we've not had a similar tariff. So I think it also helps kind of level set the playing field for U.S. farmers to allow us to produce renewable-based fuels that can help serve the world demand that was previously kind of teed up for Brazil to serve. So I think it also did some really good things there.
Steve, your dad was a farmer. You grew up on the farm. Did you ever grow corn down there in southern Minnesota?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you ever double crop corn? Did you grow it twice in a year?
No.
You didn't, huh?
The
Jeff,
genetics weren't quite that good, and neither was the climate.
Right.
Really, yeah.
And Jeff, remind me, do they double crop corn in Brazil?
Yeah, they have the opportunity to do some double crops.
So what I'm getting at is they already were born on third base related to corn production, and they have very different rules they do. And Jeff's right, they're eating our lunch. So if you care about the price of corn and you care about the family farm and preserving it, you ought to care about everything Jeff told us today in the bill. Yeah. And thankfully, the One Big Beautiful Bill puts a lot of wind at the back of all of that.
Absolutely.
It sure does.
Jeff, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We appreciate your time, and thanks for helping sponsor our program here as well. You added a lot to us with the content tonight, and we wish all the best to you and everybody there at your organization, as well as all the corn farmers across our great region.
All right. Thank you all for your great work.
And I should tell you that the North Dakota Ethanol Council represents all of the ethanol companies in North Dakota, right? So Jeff is obviously has Harborstone, which is two of those plants, but also they really play well with each other. Gary Tharaldson famously built this incredible development in Castleton, and it's run by Ryan Carter. It's an amazing organization. He sits on the Ethanol Council with Jeff as well. Red Trail Energy is now owned by Gevo, another one of our sponsors. So, and these are in small towns. We do some advertising for Tharaldson to recruit people, and I think I say some version of this. The average salary is $80,000 in Castleton, North Dakota at Tharaldson Ethanol. So just think about that. And Jeff could tell you the same thing. And again, tell me how many $80,000 jobs there are in Castleton. You know what I'm saying? So it's a juggernaut for the rural economy. It fuels the schools and everything that happens in these communities. And I don't know about you, I don't want rural North Dakota to decline.
Nope. And neither does Jeff, and neither do any of us. So thanks so much, Mr. Zuger, for being with us tonight.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yep, appreciate your time. Scott, one of the other things that was touched on in the One Big Beautiful Bill, I should say more than just touched on, but addressed specifically, was border security and immigration funding. And the bill gives about $120 billion for immigration enforcement, $46.5 billion for border wall construction, $45 billion for detention capacity expansion, and $30 billion for hiring and training immigration officers. Also introduces a $100 fee for asylum seekers. If you're wondering, during the president's first administration, the federal government spent about $11 billion on southern border wall construction and built or replaced 458 miles of border wall, and that cost averaged about $20 million per mile. It's easy to get lost in numbers and taxes and these kinds of things, but really one big beautiful bill, those of you that like to use that term, really addressed an area that I think Democrat and Republican alike have now come to the table and said we needed to do something at the southern border, and this is a big step toward taking care of that.
Yeah, and honestly, if we're talking about a town hall that we are tonight about what was in the one big beautiful bill, the entire 2 hours could be about, I believe, the biggest win for the security and safety of the United States of America is just exactly what you're talking about. And because the border now is closed, essentially, nobody talks about it. And literally, Donald Trump fixed this in 15 minutes before even building more wall, right? And Tommy Fisher is a good friend of ours. He's a North Dakotan, and he's a wall builder. And actually, I think Tommy might tell you right now that the toughest money to unpack out of this current bill is funding for the wall, because the pain point has gone away, Steve. You know what I mean? And give me the number again on what the previous administration spent on wall building versus what's now authorized.
I don't know what the Biden administration spent on
I'm sorry,
wall
the
building.
previous Trump administration.
Oh, $11 billion on southern border wall construction.
In Trump 1.0.
1.0,
Do we
yes.
know what it is at 2.0?
Yes, $120 billion, specifically 46.5 for border wall construction.
That's unbelievable.
So four-bagger.
Unbelievable. It's a 10-time plus-up of total spending, if you're saying 100 or 10 to, I don't know, maybe I'm messing up my math, but my point is they're going to spend more, and they've already fixed the border.
Yes, $11 billion in total spending in Trump 1.0, and now it's $120 total price for specifically border wall construction. It's now 46.5, and it was
considerably
11.
more. Oh, it was 11, even in wall. But remember, they started very late, obviously, in the Trump administration.
It took them forever to get started. There was a lot of headwind.
And they were fought tooth and nail by courts and everything else, and they had to allocate the money from something else. So all of that's changed. Here's what I hope. I hope the American people don't forget the pain of the Biden years on the border. Because if they do, they're going to say that's too much money for ICE agents. That's too much money for the wall. And that's why I think the Trump administration should say this is our highest priority, and we won't really have won this battle until we expend every penny of that.
Yeah. Our goal on the program here tonight is to take politics out of the conversation, but I think now even Democrats have come to the table and said we needed to do something much differently than we did before. If you get them in a private moment, maybe it's hard to necessarily get a lot of conversation like that on the record, but you've seen not only within congressional members, but also in some of the left-leaning media, you've seen a lot of that acknowledgement now that what we were doing was not sustainable and there needed to be changes. I think the debate has always been, how do you do that? But certainly it's been done now. And as we mentioned, a whole lot of money has been contributed toward doing that.
And I would just quickly say that, again, I think you're right about the politics of it. I think it even Democrats said, and by the way, the polling suggests that.
Yes.
Senator Kevin Cramer will tell you that he beat Heidi Heitkamp in no small measure because of her support of sanctuary cities. Well, Steve, Kevin got elected in 2018.
Yeah.
That was before we had a real significant, that was the first 2 years of the Biden administration. So this is a political winner for Republicans. You're right. I think the other reason they won was because of the economy, certainly. But you're right. Those are two very important things. And I think any Democrat, if there is such a thing as a normal Democrat anymore, I would say, sort of a Kent Conrad, even Byron Dorgan kind of Democrat. Yeah, the Blue Dogs, Colin Peterson would say, you're 100% right. We got to shut the border down, and the economy was in some measure in trouble. So,
thankfully, most Democrats in our part of the world are of that similar mindset. We need to have some security. We need to know where that border begins and ends. We want to thank again our sponsors tonight: Western Dakota Energy Association, the North Dakota Ethanol Council, Ellingson Companies, J&M Truck Sales, North Dakota Estate Services, Gevo, and Theraldson. Well, we've got about 30 seconds here left. A question has come in, and you can send a question into our text line here tonight as well, 701-237-1590. The question came out, why doesn't North Dakota look into nuclear power? Scott, I think that's been talked about by a former governor. I did it too. Now Secretary Burgum, that we're going to have nuclear power being established as well, specifically in North Dakota. I can't speak to specifically why that hasn't happened, but I imagine that Doug Burgum is looking into all those possibilities.
Yeah, I think North Dakota has the potential to be an all-of-the-above energy state, and you can't say you're all-of-the-above without nuclear. I think if you think CO2 is controversial, try putting nuclear rods in the ground. I also think it's way more expensive. And so it doesn't necessarily pencil out, like, for instance, stranded natural gas in the west to the east, and then turbines and electrical generation on this end of the state. But a famous political candidate for many years in North Dakota, Dwayne Sand, is actually a nuclear engineer on a submarine, and he used to advocate for that and say, what the heck, let's, we have lots of empty space, let's put these nuclear rods in the ground. There's a big debate about that now. I mean, Monticello, Minnesota has a nuclear plant, and Xcel Energy, one day loves it and next day hates it. So it's a challenging thing. Putting them close to population centers is challenging because of the whole 3 Mile Island thing, and there's still some consternation over that. I believe it's the safest, cleanest power out there, but it is expensive. And it is politically charged.
And in our state, where we have such an abundance of these wonderful natural resources already, let's just get really good in North Dakota about taking the energy that we do have here and let places that don't have as many of God's gifts figure out how to do nuclear. There's certainly a role for everybody, no question about that. I just
want to say this about nuclear, and I never can say it. I say it like George W. Bush, so I usually say nukes. But the nuclear space, I would say, is the cleanest energy. In other words, it's clean. But the green lobby agenda, what does Donald Trump call it? The green scam or whatever.
The new scam.
The new Green Deal doesn't like nuclear, and I don't get it, because if you had more nuclear, you wouldn't need fossil fuels, you wouldn't need other sources of energy, and it's just sort of odd that they don't like it, but I think it's more the fear factor.
There's not much conversation there in that topic, no doubt. When the Tax Bill Town Hall returns, hour number 2, we'll dig into how the tax bill has an impact on farmers, plus everything you want to know about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and the senior bonus as well. You're listening to the Tax Bill Town Hall on WZFG, Dilworth, Fargo, Moorhead, USA, FM 92.3 and AM 1100. Also KTGO Radio in Tioga, AM 1090 and FM 92.7, and WDAY Fargo, AM 970, FM 93.1, Fargo, Moorhead, USA. Short break, and we'll be back with Levi Otis, Director of Governmental Affairs and Public Policy at Ellingson Companies, and everything you wanted to know about no tax on tips, overtime, and the senior bonus. Don't go anywhere.
This is Mark Wagner with ND Estate Services. Mainly, my job here is to help educate families on what your kids are going to have to go through someday. We show you how to avoid that probate at death, eliminate that legal guardianship when you're incapacitated, save taxes for your family, but most of all, how you can have that peace of mind for a peaceful, private family settlement. Call us today, 701-318-0908. We'll talk to you soon.
Are wet spots in your fields holding back your yield potential? Since 1970, Ellingson has been the trusted name in agricultural drainage solutions, and they're right here in the Red River Valley. With over 50 years of experience, Ellingson knows the value of proper water management. They offer expert design, installation, remote monitoring, and a dedicated in-house service team to keep you running strong. Call today to schedule your complimentary consultation, 701-893-9030. Ellingson, 701-893-9030.
Farmers and ranchers, I got a deal for you. If you're looking for the best and largest selection of rust-free trucks, J&M Truck Sales Fargo has them. If you need a tandem, triple, or quad-axle grain truck, J&M Truck Sales has them. Check out the rust-free Kenworth 880s with the wet kits. J&M has quality products, fair prices on all truck and trailer parts, too. You can trust J&M Truck Sales Fargo. Call now, 701-282-2260 or jnmtrucksales.net.
Did you know that 1 bushel of corn can make 3 gallons of clean-burning ethanol, 15 pounds of livestock feed, corn oil, and more? North Dakota's 6 ethanol plants create 1,200 jobs, add over $1.7 billion to the economy, and keep rural towns thriving. Ethanol cuts carbon emissions by 1/3 compared to gasoline. And you can find blends like E15, Unleaded 88, and E85 at more than 40 locations statewide. Fill up with ethanol. It's good for your engine, our farmers, and the air we breathe. North Dakota Ethanol Council, fueling North Dakota, powering the state.
To care for grieving families with the utmost compassion and professionalism while caring for loved ones with dignity and grace. That is our mission at West Funeral Home and Life Tribute Center. We believe it's the little things that make the difference. Serving the Red River Valley since 1916, West Funeral Home and Life Tribute Center, with locations in West Fargo and Castleton. Visit us online at westfuneralhome.com.
With over 9,000 acres listed on upcoming Pfeiffer's land auctions, don't miss these Pfeiffer's featured events in Burke, Cass, Ward, Towner, and Williams counties in North Dakota, in Clay and Wilkin County, Minnesota, Lincoln County, South Dakota, and Dawes County, Nebraska. Also featuring an 1,800-acre ranch in Corson County, South Dakota, and an 840-acre hidden gem in the heart of the Black Hills. For full details, information, and online bidding on dozens of land and equipment auctions throughout the region, log on to Pfeifers.com.
Protect what matters most with the Liberty Safe from the Lock Shop. I'm Larry from the Lock Shop. Come see America's #1 safe for your firearms, valuables, and important documents. Built with American-made steel and cutting-edge technology, Liberty Safes are rigorously tested to withstand the worst. With a variety of sizes and styles, there's a perfect fit for every home. Act now to safeguard what's most important. Visit the Lock Shop today at 1404 33rd Street South in Fargo, or give us a call at 701-235-6645.
On this vote, the bill is passed.
One big, beautiful bill. But what's really inside the massive new tax law?
We've got to get the economy moving again, and all of that happens with this one big, beautiful bill.
Behind the bill, a Flag Family Tax Bill Town Hall.
We have a lot more ground to cover here in our special program tonight, the 2025 Reconciliation Bill Special. We call it the Tax Bill Town Hall. You might call it the One Big Beautiful Bill Town Hall. Whatever you want to call it, we're glad that you've called us a place to be here tonight for your content-absorbing pleasure. So we're very thankful to have you along for the ride here on the Flag, KTGO, the Flag, WZFG, and WDAY. And those of you who are watching us on YouTube or the video streams on our websites, we thank you very much for being here with us. Steve Hallstrom, Scott Hennen here with you, your hosts for this second hour of the program. We want to start off this hour by thanking our sponsors again, the Western Dakota Energy Association, North Dakota Ethanol Council, J&M Truck Sales, ND Estate Services, Gevo, and Theraldson Companies. And we want to say a special welcome to Ellingson Companies and the Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy at Ellingson Companies, Levi Otis. And Ellingson Companies serves the region with water management and drainage systems. And boy, a lot of impact in that particular world with ag and taxes, Scott, as we transition into conversation with Mr. Otis.
Levi, thanks for being here. We appreciate you.
Yeah, Scott, thanks for having me.
I think if you talk to most farmers around the state, they would say there's no bigger advocate in the legislature, in the Congress, or just in general for farmers and agriculture, and we really wanted to focus on them a little bit and ask Levi to come in and leverage the relationships he has and the pain points that he hears about from farmers, so we appreciate you doing it. Tell us about Ellingson, first of all, and what you do.
Yeah, Ellingson, for those of you who don't know, has been around 55 years, started in 1970 in Dodge County, Minnesota, in between Rochester and Owatonna, so not too far from Mayo Clinic. Started up here in 1999. Was a tough road to hoe, as they say, and it took a little while for drainage to kick in about 2010, 11, 12, when prices were great. People started to put it in, and as we worked with the legislature, as you've said, laws got a lot easier to navigate and a lot more friendly for our farmers in North Dakota. And now that that's happened, well, you could ask any farmer if they've tiled once, if they haven't done it again, they've got a map for another project, because once you do it, it's addicting.
It gets in your blood.
Yeah.
Well, tell me why you think it was a tougher sell in North Dakota than Minnesota. I know that dates back generations, but they always say what people fight over oil and whiskey. Is that the line?
Yeah.
So it's got a constant battle. But why was North Dakota behind the eight ball, do you believe?
Well, number one, we were a target. Nothing against Teddy Roosevelt, but he was a big conservationist. And when we as farmers across the I-states were getting paid to drain wetlands, they did not want 200 bushel corn in North Dakota. And it was a prairie pothole region, so they came up here and they signed easements and then the 1985 Farm Bill, so U.S. Fish and Wildlife easements under the interior. Then the 85 Farm Bill, they're like, oh my gosh, we drained all these wetlands through the I-states, and now we got to preserve those. So let's start a subsidy program to pay these guys off for not being able to improve their ground. And so we've had to navigate a lot of that red tape, not drain wetlands, but there's so much government overreach and I would say within the agencies depending on who you're going to talk to, depends on what you get to do on your job. And we don't like that uncertainty. Obviously, agriculture hates it, but then we as contractors and engineers we don't appreciate that either. So that's when guys like me get hired to have to go and unwind all of this. And then you've got administrations like the one we have that agree, listen, this is the law, but if you have to work within the law, then the government should have to work within the law. So getting those things, again, unwound, and so that we can improve land around these wetlands, right, or mitigate those wetlands, that's a big part of my job.
I'm curious, speaking of the policy, we're obviously talking tonight about the One Big Beautiful Bill, and obviously if farmers have a better bottom line, then they're able to take advantage of things that Ellickson can do for them to further their better P&L, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing I would just say there is now more and more in North Dakota, they at least have that option to do it, but do they have the dollars to do it, and will this bill help that?
Right, so two things that you touched on. Farmer's got a buck, he likes to spend it, right? Whether it's me or it's going to a hockey game or it's at Shields in town, and I've got to compliment the Moorhead West Fargo Chamber because Shannon and her team over there recognize that farmers and agriculture are a massive, massive part not only of our interior Cass County or the city of Fargo with other companies like Titan, like John Deere, like Offutt, right? Not just those companies, but everybody that comes here. Drive around Fargo this week and who's school shopping? Big farm trucks, right? And those people are spending money here, right? And so they've been great advocates, and it continues to grow. But when you talk about spending money with guys like us, with Ellickson, when you have prices like this, drain tile really puts money in your pocket, because what else can you do if you don't have bushels, right? So you need to get those bushels in the bin, and
but you got to have the money to pay for it.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, the dollars have got to come from somewhere, and farmers, correct me if I'm wrong, have more debt this year than they did last year, and that is starting to get a little bit ugly. So what do you do in that case? Just tell me what you think farmers are doing. Are they working with their lenders and saying, if I did invest in that, would I get this? And then also, again, back to the bill, is it more affordable for me to do a project like this now than it was before because I can depreciate it all in a year if they need any depreciation, because you need income to depreciate things, right?
Yep, absolutely. So what we're seeing is either you have a little left in your operating note and you can still do it. You might be able to borrow against some land, which nobody, I don't think, is doing that this week. And then with our intern today, when I told him I was coming on, he said, "Oh, the OBB, is that One Big Beautiful Bill?" So from 21 all the way up to whatever 65, there's a different acronym and a saying for it. But being able to depreciate everything this year is going to be huge. But as you said, they have to make money. So one thing we're hearing a lot of is that absentee landowners, right? They're coming in because they're diversified, or they live in Minneapolis. They've got a lot of cash. Now they can come in, right, and not raise their rent, but they're gonna dump all their money into tile because it makes their land more valuable for their renter. And then we'll have a conversation about raising rent later. But now you're taking a lot of the risk out of that guy's operation.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, in the Hallstrom farm, did Roger say, let's put a little money in tile?
I think Dad was ahead of his time, but not that far ahead of his time. So we did not. And there were a lot of times when we sat and watched the rain fall and we said, "No, Lord Jesus, please stop that." And then there were times we said, "Let's go." So it's always been a variable, no doubt about it. But Levi, I think you said something that's really, really wise here. And that is that when commodity prices are down, yield is everything. And it's going to be a tough year for farmers. We know that are in the production crop business. But you've got to squeeze every dime you can out of your field when you can. And so anything that you could do that. Along that line, I want to talk a little bit about something that doesn't get talked a whole lot about in the ag space, but natural gas is a key input on a lot of the fertilizer products that are used. And the fact that One Big Beautiful Bill, however, whatever you want to use for the name, plus the current administration's a policy on energy exploration and development is really big, and anything we can get right now to lower input prices is manna from heaven for farmers.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You talk about natural gas and that pipeline that they're talking about bringing across. we as North Dakotans sometimes are our own worst enemy because we believe in private property rights, but we don't believe it in you. We just believe it for ourselves.
Yeah.
And we are the epicenter of being our own global economy with what we have in energy and
100% right.
Yeah. And we need to build dairy farms, and we need to build hog farms, and we need to bring natural gas instead of flaring it off. And we need to build the infrastructure so that these power lines can move more energy to other states, and computer security, right? Cybersecurity. We had a governor that just knows that world, right? And we need to be able to invest in that. And it's not spending. These aren't spending projects. These are investments for our kids, grandkids, and kids down the road.
Are any of these projects, Levi, the ones, I assume they are, but I guess I don't know. Tell me about how the expensing of the depreciation will impact some of your customers. Will this now be a device in which they can have a very nice tax benefit to them by expensing the entire project that you work on them with?
Absolutely. From the few guys that I've talked to since Hennen asked me to come on, when back to the chamber, we had an agribusiness committee meeting with several bankers on a panel, and they said the strongest guys in their banks, all of them agreed it was people that had storage, right? So big bins and drain tile. And that's who we're seeing that are buying again. And if those guys have some cash, right, that the bonus depreciation is going to be huge.
Or a patient banker.
Or a patient banker.
Yeah. Or, hey, maybe we should sell this land and rent that land back, and then the buyer will invest in the tile because it'll make us better, right?
Well, and there's been some good years, so there's a lot of guys with little debt, right? And so but that's not everybody.
It's moving all the time,
right,
isn't it?
You're correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going the right direction.
In case you don't, it gets a little into the weeds when you talk about expensing depreciation, but I looked up, talk to me like I'm a fifth grader and tell me about this. So basically you can immediately deduct the full cost of certain assets like the equipment, the machinery that you buy, instead of spreading that deduction over 7 years. Normally, you're going to deduct a certain amount as that asset depreciates over time. And right now, you can take that entire deduction in the year that you buy whatever it is that you're going to buy, whether that's a drainage system, a tractor, a bin, whatever you might have. And that means that the businesses, the farms, they're going to have an incentive to buy because they're going to see that money come back to them quicker. It's going to be a tax year adjustment thing when you file your taxes, but those benefits will come back your way fairly quickly. And I looked up, what's kind of some of the ranges that you see typically on depreciation. So in the past, most machinery and equipment had to be depreciated over 5 to 7 years. When it came to property in buildings specifically, they were depreciated up to 39 years. So now you take a look at that versus now what we have in that immediate ability to realize that depreciation expense on your taxes. That could be a really nice tax return that you get to put together with your tax professional.
And remind me, we've had 100% depreciation before, but it's sunset, correct?
I think that's right, Scott. I think we have.
And now it's back. I don't know how long it's back for, but there is a incentive for two reasons. One, if you it's optional, you don't have to do it. But if you think you're going to have a pretty good year, obviously you do it, and it shores you up a little bit, right? I mean, so there is a reason to do it, and then they're investing in a drainage, and then they have better yields, and then next year gets better. I'm curious what you're hearing, Levi, from people who say, Levi, I wasn't going to light up a project, but now I've got Farm Bill certainty from the Farm Bill that's in the One Big Beautiful Bill, and I've got the tax option on the 100% depreciation. So my answer was no yesterday, but it's yes today. Is that happening?
Yeah, I think so. The only bad part is we're busy all the time, so we're filling up that schedule rather quickly, and I think.
So you think money's coming off the sidelines a little bit? They might not be able to get it today, but they're going to say, "I'll sign here."
And I would go back to the absentee landowner part, right? If it's a dad that's retired that's not farming, see, before it had to be a farmer that did it. You had to be a farmer. Now, I might own a business in town and still have farmland, and I might need a place to put some cash.
Yes,
I'm calling Ellingson and get me on that schedule ASAP. And that happened the last 2 weeks. Really quickly.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'd love to ask the question of the implement dealers the same way. And my question is, obviously I think if you talk to an equipment dealer, they'd tell you that, sales have fallen off a cliff. Heck, the gold standard RDO is laying off people, right? Caterpillar is. I mean, John Deere is nationally. It's a tough go right now. And so if Levi's farming, he might not have bought a combine anyway. And whether he has to add more debt or not, if he can go to the banker and say, well, I can 100% depreciate it, let me buy it because I'll get better for it. I'm just curious, the position you're in is, hey, we're already busy. And now we want more people in the pipeline, so to speak. Right. But I don't know that that's the case with the implement dealers. Have you heard anything just from other vendors or other people that are selling farmers something every day?
Well, if you watch the TV advertisements and they're offering 0% financing, it shows you how slow that business is. I feel for them, right? But equipment's expensive, right? Like really expensive. Yeah. And so do you buy something that is going to increase your bushels or allow you to hang on to your product until you get a better price? Yeah. And that's what I guess we're hearing from the guys that are choosing drain tile or bins. And frankly, that storm that we had in June, my bin buddies were like, there was a lot of guys that were hemming and hawing, and as soon as that storm hit, they called and said, give me those bins. Yeah. Right?
What did we lose, 500 million bushels of storage, I think I heard? It's an insane number.
I think Governor Armstrong said it was the most significant potential economic impact on North Dakota just in what they lost in storage there. Yeah,
absolutely. Sure. I want to talk a little bit, Levi, about no tax on overtime. It's one of the big things that was kind of one of the new things that President Trump had campaigned on, and it did make its way into this bill. And so I'll just give everybody a little bit of an overview on this because I still get a lot of questions. Oh, does this apply to me? What if I make a certain amount of money? So here's what it does. It allows for a federal income tax deduction for qualified overtime pay, $12,500 for a single filer, and $25,000 for joint filers each year. Only the premium portion of the time and a half is considered to count in that formula there, and so state-specific or contractual overtime may not qualify. So a little-known clause there, but it might apply here and there. There are some income limits on this, and this is important because a number of our friends that make overtime money, they're doing pretty good. The deduction phases out $100 for every $1,000 of adjusted gross income above $150,000 for a single filer or $300,000 for a joint filer. And there's no deduction if your adjusted gross income is over $275,000 for a single or $550,000 for a joint filer.
I want to jump in on that piece, Steve, because essentially what that's saying is, and again, I think one of the things that is the biggest misnomer to Levi's point of, if you watch the news, you'd say this bill was really just for rich people and it doesn't help the little guy. And I think this is a good example of how exactly the opposite is true. Yes. Because if I'm a waiter or a maitre d' at a Las Vegas restaurant, I probably make $500,000. And, a lot of people slip $100 bills into my pocket. Oh, yeah. And really, do you need a tax break? No. But in a minute, I want to ask Levi, how many of his crews, for instance, or the farmhands on, would it incentivize them? Because there's currently a reverse incentive, if you will, or perverse incentive to say, why would I work more? Because I'm just going to give more to Uncle Sam. So, that's right. But I think what's interesting there is it is capped. So essentially, the no tax on overtime is for the little guy.
Yeah, and the caps are fairly high, but there's a lot of electricians, plumbers, people like that who are doing very well that do get overtime as well. Just two quick notes I want to add to this before Scott asks Levi his question. For employers now, there are some things that you need to be aware of. If you are an employer that has overtime with your employers, you must report that qualified overtime separately on the Form W-2. So you're going to have to itemize that out on the W-2. And if for non-employees on the 1099 form that you send them, Social Security and Medicare taxes still apply to this. And employers have to continue withholding all payroll taxes. The deduction applies when you're filing your taxes. So it's not going to help you until you file your tax forms at the end of the year.
Yeah. So my question for you, Levi, would be, how does that change the game at Ellingson?
Well, you know how hard it's been to hire people in the last, definitely since COVID. And our guys know how much they make, right? So if they're making $40 an hour, $50 an hour, whatever the amount is, right, they know what that sweet spot is of overtime before they really start to get penalized. And they're like, hey, we're shutting down for the week because we've had 4 great days and our hours are pumped. they want to work more, but it, like you said, it's a perverse incentive, and everybody needs a break anyway, and sometimes you need a forced one. But this allows those guys that want to work and want to get those hours in, whatever. They might have a trip coming up. They want to bust their butts, and we got school coming up, right? We got school shopping, extra expenses you don't normally have. Right, they can get in and they can work in it when we've had a lot of rain, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's too much water even for us, right? so you're losing hours that week. Well, now you can come in and you can get all overtime you want, make up for that short week, and you're not going to get kicked in the knee by Uncle Sam because we want to tax you to death.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this starts in 26, right? That's when you can begin. It didn't retroactive. I
believe it's retroactive to start of this year.
Oh, okay. Well, the 100% deduction is, so maybe that's you're probably right.
I'm almost positive.
So if we have crews out there, just keep plugging away.
Yeah. Well, to his point, you don't realize the benefit until the end of the year anyway. So nobody's done their 25 taxes. So Steve's probably right on that.
Sure.
I'm just confused on what starts in 26 and what's in 25. But I think they're trying to put some wind at the back of the economy. So as many things as they could were retroactive to 2025, which is fabulous. So I guess my reason I asked that is that game already changed? Is somebody that would have said, I'm out of here, I'm going to go with my wife and go to the lake because I'm going to cost myself money if I keep doing that? Are they now going, Levi, really, I don't want to see my wife anyway, and I'll keep working?
And by the way, the answer is yes. Retroactive January 1.
So, yeah, I think so. And as more of the bill comes out and people understand it and we get the message out to our employees, here you go, absolutely.
Are you having those conversations with your employees?
Well, we're having them internally and just trying to understand that, who was it? Pelosi said we have to read the bill to understand the bill.
Yeah. And before we find out what's in it.
Before we find out what's in it. So, we're just combing through and trying to learn as fast as everybody else.
And I think what he described, Steve, is everywhere, which is why we're doing this tonight.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I hear no tax on overtime, and I think no tax on tips, and I'm like, well, Katie, bar the door, let's go.
Yes.
But people got to know about it, and I actually think the Trump administration could be better to say, okay, we fought hard for you on this, and now here's what's happening, but it trickles down to employers to incentivize more work. So we appreciate you, Levi. You're probably the farmer's best friend in North Dakota, so keep at it.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming in.
I appreciate you guys.
Levi Ellingson, and no greater source of perspective on this in this ag and tax part of it, Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy at Ellingson Companies. All right, Scott, we need, before we hit our next break here, to hit on the no tax on tips and the senior deduction, because these are two important parts as well. Let's talk about no tax on tips. What it does, it allows the federal income tax deduction for up to $25,000 of tips per year for both single and joint filers. So you and your spouse cannot both take the $25,000. It's per tax return if you file jointly. Workers and occupations that normally require tips are eligible here: food service, beauty care, and so forth. Voluntary cash, credit card, tip sharing platforms, all of that counts into the plan here. There is an income limit as well. The deduction phases out by $100 for every $1,000 of adjusted gross income, above $150,000 for single, or $300,000 for joint. So again, there is a cap up there, but it certainly benefits the lowest income people on the tips income as well. And it does phase out at $400,000 or $500,000 for joint filer. Employers have to report the qualified tips and occupations on their W-2. Non-employees on a 1099 form and Social Security and Medicare taxes still apply. And this only applies to federal income tax. So this is important if you live in an area where you've got state and local taxes as well,
Minnesota.
or local payroll taxes, not far from here. Yeah.
Something in my throat
there you go. It does not apply to that, only federal taxes.
And I want to say that everything talked about in the big, beautiful bill, and much of it, by the way, came during the campaign. So President Trump said, if you elect me, there'll be no tax on tips. If you elect me, there'll be no tax on overtime. And I realize when a president says that, ultimately he means I'll advocate for that and I'll go to the wall for you people, but Congress has to do it.
Yeah.
I was disappointed when I got into the weeds of these two things because of, like, if I'm crushing it in tips or I'm, crushing it in overtime, after $25,000, it doesn't matter anymore because of those caps.
Yes.
Right? And that's even 12.5 is the cap if you're a joint
Single.
filer on Yeah, if you're single, is it overtime that's 12.5 and 12.5? Yeah. So you get to a 25 cap with joint filers, husband and wife income related to overtime, but the 25 is for everybody on tips.
Yeah.
Okay. And right. So what I'm getting at is I'm actually disappointed by this. I also think, in other words, I think they could do better.
Yeah.
And what do we care if the limits are 50? Now, that comes back to our discussion earlier. The reason they're saying 25, not 50, 50, not 100, is because of the cost of that. And again, I would argue, to Levi's point earlier, his guys might work, and then guess what? They're going to go buy a new truck.
Yeah.
You know, and they're going to take that money and put it back in the economy. So I actually think there's going to be more wins. And correct me if I'm wrong, don't these sunset pretty quick? Like
at the end of the administration.
Right. So, and part of that's cute because it's going to say, oh, are you going to raise taxes?
Very
on
good
overtime?
gamesmanship.
Yeah. I would also argue when the real effect that we believe and many conservative economists believe kicks in, they're going to say, well, this is a no-brainer. Maybe we go from 25 to 50.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a good starting spot. I will say that if you've got somebody who's making, let's say, $100,000 if you work a lot of hours at the restaurant, and you're in a 20% tax bracket, and you're 25,000 or you're 12.5 or whatever, you know, it's still something there. If you've got 20% taxes on $1,250, that's $2,500. So it's not nothing.
No,
but you're right. It certainly could be increase as time goes on.
And this is just typical political rhetoric. But when Donald Trump said no tax on was it tips first when he announced it in Vegas? I think
tips
so.
was, I think, the first one.
Yeah, and I hear that and I go, holy buckets!
Yes.
Now I can work 24 hours a day, but you can't. So anyway, but that's getting into the weeds, and you can't exactly say that from the podium. The other one that has been talked about, and I know you're going to tell us about it now, no tax on Social Security.
Yes.
That didn't actually happen.
Correct.
But they found a way to do the same thing.
Yeah, they couldn't call it that for some sort of constitutional reasons, and so they said, well, we'll just skin this cat a different way. So they are giving seniors what's called a senior deduction. So you can't call it a tax credit. You can't call it a no tax on Social Security. But what it does, it provides an additional $6,000 deduction for seniors 65 and over. It's available for income levels below 75,000 single or 150,000 joint filers, which if you think about it, most seniors that are on fixed income, they're not making much more than that unless they've got a lot of investments there. It's important to note, this is not a tax credit. It's an above the line deduction. So you're taking your income and you're subtracting this to lower your income there, and it reduces the taxable income for eligible seniors.
Which, by the way, is no small deal, because what you're talking about there is literally cash in their pocket.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
Most of these people are on fixed incomes.
Yeah, and a lot of them will tell you, we did not get a lot of big breaks from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It helped a lot of people low income that were working, but not necessarily seniors that didn't have a lot of income there. So the deductions do require a valid Social Security number, so this is a Trump clause. It's got to be for somebody who's a legal citizen
It should be. I mean, that makes sense.
Yep. And like you said, this one, like no tax on overtime and no tax on tips, expires after 2028 unless it's extended by Congress. So
fascinating. And I would argue, again, it's hard to pick. It's like, who's your favorite child? Is it Aaron or is it Natalie? Or for me, Alex, Hannah, Haley. It's impossible to say. But I think that about the One Big Beautiful Bill. Everybody you ask to say, what's your favorite child in this, has a different answer, because there's so many amazing things.
Yeah.
And that's a prime example. And I think it also counters a political argument that this was all about tax breaks for the rich so they could steal from Medicaid, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
No question. Yeah, Medicaid funding, like Scott said, has been a hot topic, certainly in this conversation. So has what some are calling an unfair benefit to the wealthy, and we'll dig in on that when the Tax Bill Town Hall returns.
Hi, I'm Allison with the Western Dakota Energy Association. Our job is to look out for the economic and social interests of cities, counties, and school districts in the energy-producing region of our state, the oil, gas, and coal counties. We work closely with North Dakota's elected leaders to deliver supportive infrastructure, good schools, and a strong business climate. We also do our best to keep our members informed with a weekly newsletter and on social media. Learn more about the Western Dakota Energy Association at ndenergy.org.
This is Mark Wagner with ND Estate Services. Mainly, my job here is to help educate families on what your kids are going to have to go through someday. We show you how to avoid that probate at death, eliminate that legal guardianship when you're incapacitated, save taxes for your family, but most of all, how you can have that peace of mind for a peaceful, private family settlement. Call us today, 701-318-0908. We'll talk to you soon.
Are wet spots in your fields holding back your yield potential? Since 1970, Ellingson has been the trusted name in agricultural drainage solutions, and they're right here in the Red River Valley. With over 50 years of experience, Ellingson knows the value of proper water management. They offer expert design, installation, remote monitoring, and a dedicated in-house service team to keep you running strong. Call today to schedule your complimentary consultation, 701-893-9030. Ellingson, 701-893-9030.
Farmers and ranchers, I got a deal for you. If you're looking for the best and largest selection of rust-free trucks, J&M Truck Sales Fargo has them. If you need a tandem, triple, or quad-axle grain truck, J&M Truck Sales has them. Check out the rust-free Kenworth 880s with the wet kits. J&M has quality products, fair prices on all truck and trailer parts, too. You can trust J&M Truck Sales Fargo. Call now, 701-282-2260 or jnmtrucksales.net.
If you're looking for a light, low-carb option with great taste, the Vizzy Cream Variety Pack is perfect for you. Whether you're hanging out with friends or lounging on the deck, this line of tasty hard seltzers are inspired by your favorite frozen treats. First to come was Vizzy Orange Cream Pop with its perfect blend of fizzy and a burst of zesty orange, plus a touch of vanilla sweetness. And Vizzy has now added strawberry and raspberry cream pop. You can get all three flavors in their new Vizzy Cream Pop Hard Seltzer Variety Pack, available in your local liquor stores.
Hi, my name is Jen. My husband and I were always tired and unhappy with our bodies. I had constant joint pain. We needed to do something. Just days after starting our health journey with Red River Wellness, I had noticeable relief in pain. We followed the planned steps, did check-ins, a few exercises, and finished our program in June, down nearly 50 pounds combined. I still follow food guidelines, have lost 40 pounds to date, eliminated joint pain, and stopped several medications. While I like watching the changes I see in my body and enjoy having more energy, the biggest reason I continue is simply that I feel so much better.
Need a reset? At Red River Wellness, people are feeling younger with very simple changes. Text RESET to 701-809-9032. Get the video. Text RESET to 701-809-9032.
Waking up sweaty? Snooze Fargo's Cool for the Summer sale has the chill you've been dreaming of. With advanced cooling tech, top brand beds, and 0% financing, better sleep is just a visit away. Come explore our comfiest, coolest beds from top brands all under one roof. Plus, pay $0 today, 0% financing for up to 2 years. Say goodbye to sweaty sleep and hello to true comfort. Snooze Fargo. If you don't snooze, you lose. 5050 13th Avenue South, Fargo.
On this vote, the bill is passed.
One big, beautiful bill. But what's really inside the massive new tax law?
We've got to get the economy moving again, and all of that happens with this one big, beautiful bill.
Behind the Bill, a Flag Family Tax Bill Town Hall.
Back for our final segment here on what has been a quickly moving 2-hour special. We want to say thank you to our sponsors, Western Dakota Energy Association, North Dakota Ethanol Council, Ellingson Companies, J&M Truck Sales, ND Estate Services, GEVO, and Theraldson.
I wanted to say a quick word about Mark Wagner and the team at ND Estate Services, because I don't think there's anybody better to help families with generational wealth. And really, if you had to say anything about what this bill was intended to do, Donald Trump would say it's about a golden age for America.
And their families,
right.
absolutely.
And Kevin O'Leary was here recently, said, hey, North Dakota should be the Norway of North America. That means a lot more wealth, and that means also who's going to get that, how am I going to pass that down to my families, rather than send it to Uncle Sam.
Yes.
And there literally is nobody better in the sound of my voice, North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, that can help you do that. It's no probate, it's a better tax treatment, it's more than importantly peace of mind. So ND Estate Services, good sponsor of ours on many of these, and Mark is a sponsor because he knows that this is now a more important topic. Andrew Nias is a school choice warrior to the nth degree. He has lobbied on this issue. He has been a executive in the Republican Party to talk about this. He helps the American Federation for Children. He's here today to tell us what in the One Big Beautiful Bill will be good for families that want options related to where their kids go to school. Andrew, thanks for joining us. Tell us what we need to know about this.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much. Yeah, we finally have forced the issue. Trump and our Republican-controlled Congress has created a tax credit. Now, this is not a deduction. It's a credit that donors can use to give to an organization that then funds students directly. So if a student wants to apply to a scholarship granting organization, they can apply for a scholarship, get that scholarship, and then go to the school of their choice or fund some other part of their education.
And a couple things I want to talk about there. So currently, is it a cap? If Steve said, I want to give to Park Christian Schools and donate to them for a scholarship, is the tax treatment on him capped?
So yes, the credit is limited to $1,700. Now, any amount you give is still deductible beyond that, but it's a dollar-for-dollar credit. So if I give $1, I get $1 back. If I give $1,000, I get $1,000 back. If I give $2,000, I'm getting $1,700 back as a credit, and then $300 that's deductible after that.
And given the amount of money that Steve makes running this company, which is goes into these microphones, I would say if he decided he wants to give, he and Tracy want to give $5,000 to Park Christian Schools, Capstone, whatever, he can give now $6,700 and have basically nothing out of his pocket.
You can afford to be more generous now, and that's the idea. I mean, we see this all through the One Big Beautiful Bill. It's meant to get people in the middle income brackets to engage again. You can take ownership in your generosity. And we saw that all across the bill.
And I would also say, Steve, that there has been a colossal battle, and Andrew, you've seen this firsthand, when it comes to school choice reforms in the state. North Dakota, most of the politicians, at least, Governor Armstrong, Governor Burgum before him, and others, Jack Dalrymple, John Hoeven, we're for school choice, and we want to help. And the legislative leaders say, we're on board. And public schools say not so fast, and the public schools win. So despite the fact that they say they want it, again, this session, they've not been able to do it. So obviously you don't want to give up on that front, but how does the One Big Beautiful Bill make all of that less necessary?
So let's make a few things clear. One is the bill, this credit does not touch public schools. And public school students are eligible for those scholarships. So it can help public school students just the same as it helps home educated students or private school students. It doesn't matter. It's totally ambivalent toward what type of education you're getting. We're funding education again instead of funding schooling. And so it holds completely harmless the public schools. It holds completely harmless the state government. This is money that the federal government is giving back to you after you give to a scholarship granting organization. Now, that in the long term, any kind of school choice program, they all save the government money because it costs less to educate students outside of government schools.
Which is why, for the life of me, I can't understand why public schools fight this. Because literally, if they have 1,000 students this year and they have 800 last year, they have more in their bottom line. They need less of our property taxes. It's mind-boggling, but it's more of a cultural thing, I think. Hey, we have to educate everybody. You don't. You're born on third base because you get free money from donors, all of that.
Yeah, well, and by the way, it's not just rich kids going to private school, and it's not just poor kids going to public school. You're paying twice as much to send, sorry, taxpayers, you're paying twice as much to send a wealthy kid to a public school. And I mean, what's the problem? It's about control. It's not about the money.
I would also say the reason it hasn't happened to date is largely because of this rub between don't move our cheese for your benefit. I think the legislature has said we're going to hold public schools harmless. They still don't care because I think they think the camel's nose under the tent is going to change everything. What I like about this is everybody wins. Public and private school people win, and literally win. So if my son was a Shanley student, but he wanted to learn Chinese for God knows what reason, I guess because he was a pilot, and you need to, I guess, if you're in a cockpit in China, you need to know Chinese. Well, he went to Davies, and so, a student can choose that, but it costs mom and dad money to do it, right. And now it wouldn't. I could take my scholarship and go learn Chinese.
Right. I think there's a general aviation, like a private pilot program at Century High School in Bismarck. I mean, I don't know if it's completely free, but things like that can enhance your education, that's available to everyone. It doesn't all have to happen in a desk at a public school.
Last quick question. This won't happen until we have an apparatus in the state to authorize it, and that has to be done, is it a year from now? It's a ways.
Yeah, it's a ways out. This doesn't kick in until 2027, so your gifts next year won't be eligible. But all we have to do is rubber stamp it. Now, if North Dakota, or any state, I'm confident North Dakota will, but if any state doesn't opt into this, then their taxpayers are still eligible for the credit. They'll just give in another state. So we would be sending, if we don't approve this, we'd be, then I'm going to donate in Minnesota.
Yep.
Even if it's just for the credit, I'll give $1,700. I'll get $1,700 back. I'm helping some kid, and it goes out of North Dakota.
We appreciate you because you are a warrior on this front, and you live this, you breathe this. So we appreciate that very much. And I think honestly, what you just described for it, I wrote a column about this as sort of the great unknown secret in the big beautiful bill because it's one of the biggest things that's not known that could really make a difference.
It's small, but it's permanent. This does not need to be renewed. This is permanent tax policy.
And it's a start. Who knows where it goes?
And it's uncapped, so eat it up.
Thank you, Andrew.
Good stuff, Andrew. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Andrew Nias advocates for American Federation for Children and has lobbied on this front for a long time and works his butt off doing it, so we appreciate him.
Well, we cannot have a conversation about the tax bill without talking about the permanent extension of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which happened during President Trump's first term. There might be more here than you remember. There was more than what I had remembered. I'm going to go very quickly through the high points of what was in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So first of all, you have to know that the tax brackets are going to be honored. The guarantee is if this bill would not have gotten through, every American would have gotten a tax hike, every single one, because the tax brackets would have reverted to what they used to be. So the tax brackets are currently 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, and 37. They used to be 10, 15, 25, 28, 33, 35, and 39.6. So most of those brackets, a couple percent or 3% higher. So that affects a large number of Americans, no question about it. And there is an inflation adjustment for the lower three brackets that doesn't get talked about a whole lot that is more generous, and that benefits those middle income earners, those making anywhere from about $9,300 to about $191,000. That's a lot of middle America right there. The standard deduction has been extended as well. And if you remember, that was a doubled standard deduction in the original act. And it's not just been extended, it's been expanded as well for 2025, up to $15,750 for single filers, $31,500 for married filing jointly, $23,625 for heads of household. The child tax credit, not just extended, but expanded. $2,000, now it's being expanded to $2,200. So again, hear what we're saying. That $2,000 would have gone away. But now you not only get to keep your $2,000, you get to add another $200 to it as well.
And I would also say it's an incentive to have kids
There you go.
It is.
Yes, it is.
Make more babies, and it won't cost you as much.
There you go.
And we need more babies.
We do. Listen to Charlie Kirk.
Right. Elon Musk says the same thing. Yeah.
The state and local tax, the SALT deduction cap, it was controversial, but it is in, and that's something that benefits a lot of Americans in some of the bigger urban areas there. The mortgage interest deduction. The $750,000 cap on mortgage debt for interest deductions is made permanent. Again, that would have expired as well. Personal exemptions, those would have expired, and those now continue to go along for the ride. And charitable contributions. The Tax Cuts and Job Act, 60% gross income limit for cash donations to public charities is made permanent. So again, all those things I've talked about in the last 2 minutes, those things would have gone away had this not, and nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, but very few people seem to want to talk about that.
Which is typical. It's human nature. You take it for granted. But
you do.
I think the biggest thing politically that will come out of this is the Democrats voted for tax hikes. They voted for, the little guy to have a higher tax tab. I actually asked Congresswoman Julie Fedorchuk about this. I said, if you had to pick one thing that was the most important thing in the one big beautiful bill, she had a pretty good answer, didn't she?
She did. And we actually have that cut here right now. And she said, the thing that people need to remember above everything else is how much this bill favors hardworking North Dakotans.
It's very much pro-family. And, the line for the Democrats nationwide has been, this is tax cuts for the billionaires and millionaires. That's absolutely, completely false. It's just not true. The tax bracket, the tax rate for the highest earners is 37% today, and it remains 37% under the new bill. There's no tax cuts included or reductions for that level of earner. In fact, the working class tax relief is for everyone making 40 to 50K or lower. The 15,000 and under workers or earners, 16.4% decrease in their tax rate.
Wow.
For people earning 15,000 to 30K of taxable income, that reduction is 27%. The reduction for folks earning between 30 and 40,000 is almost 10%, and for folks earning 40 to 50 is 7.2%. Additionally, every family with children will get a $2,200 tax credit. That's up from $2,000, and $1,700 of that tax credit is refundable, meaning that they get it back even if they don't have a tax debt. It's refundable.
Wow.
So those are the things for the average Americans, right?
Yeah.
The working families.
You bet.
Here's what I think is so important for businesses. And I've already heard stories from North Dakotans. I was just home. I spent the last week running around North Dakota and heard great stories from businesses about these changes. But we have included in this is the permanent classification of the 199A. That's a tax policy that affects the small businesses who run their income through their personal income. So they get a 20% deduction on their income earned from their business through that policy. And that's permanent. That was intended to help kind of equalize the tax cuts the last time around for corporate, the reduction for corporate, so that you could also benefit the small business owners. That also has a huge benefit to our farmers because many of them organize under that 199A status. So that's huge. And then additionally, we made 100% deduction of capital expenses, immediately deductible, 100%, and that is permanent. Also 100% of investments for R&D, also immediately deductible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some big pieces and some really good stuff there that you can't neglect that, the 20% pass-through.
And again, in politics, there's rhetoric. I'm going to clutch my pearls and say in a casino there's gambling. I get it. But I believe the most dishonest about this was about tax breaks for the rich. And this is all about the wealthy. The expense
it's a
of
working
Medicaid.
Class bill.
They like to say, yeah, you cut Medicaid because you want to give your rich guys a tax break. But that's not true either.
Yep. There's been a lot of talk, too, Scott, about Medicaid, and there's been a lot of positioning politically on this as well, talking about Medicaid will get cut. And you had a chance to interview Michelle Fischbach, Congresswoman from the state of Minnesota from Congressional District 7, and she talked a little bit about this, and she said, forget about all the spin, forget about what the smart people are telling you. This bill actually protects Medicaid.
There is so so much misinformation and might I say fear-mongering out there about particularly this portion of the bill. And I think you mentioned it. There is so much good about this bill that we can get into later. But, really the focus on the Medicaid changes were, and I will say this, we're really getting at waste, fraud, and abuse. We want to strengthen the program to make sure that those people that need it are getting it. And that's what's going to happen. The people that are out there, they're talking about all of these people that are going to lose their Medicaid. We are not talking about the disabled, the elderly, the children. We are talking about those who are not qualified to be on it, shouldn't be on it. You just take the one example. 1.6 million people are improperly enrolled. They may be in dual states. They may be so they're improperly enrolled.
Okay, wait a minute.
Medicaid.
So when Hakeem Jeffries and every Democrat, AOC, and all these crazies that are in Congress on the left, when they say people are going to lose their Medicaid, they're probably including the 1.6 million that violate the rules of Medicaid and aren't even supposed to be on Medicaid. Then would that be fair?
Exactly, Scott. Exactly. They are not. They're talking. We are talking about people who are not qualified in the first place, and who shouldn't be on it. Who have been, they haven't been checked. They haven't. They are enrolled simultaneously in various states. And so, yes, absolutely, there will be people who will not have Medicaid, but they were never qualified to have Medicaid. So it's unfair what the Democrats are saying, and just, they are just using it to, to fearmonger people and make people think the sky is falling, and not really looking at what we're doing. Because if we strengthen this program and we save those dollars, we can do a better job for those people who should be on Medicaid, that are on Medicaid, that need Medicaid.
She did a great job, as Julie Fedorchuk did, in talking about this. Unfortunately, they're not winning the rhetorical battle right now. Donald Trump isn't winning the rhetorical battle. Republicans and the people that support this bill need to do better to tell this story, because that's a great story.
Yeah. I think that same principle applies too, Scott, to the SNAP rules.
Yep.
That's being played as a lot of people are going to lose their food. Well, again, these benefits that we have, the SNAP benefits, supplementary nutrition, is meant for Americans and meant for people that are in this country paying the taxes. And so it's a debate that you're going to have for a long time. But there are a couple pieces of that, and I thought that Congresswoman Fishbach and then talking about the SNAP rules as well, a pretty big part of that, about what these benefits were really intended to. We want to say thank you again to our sponsors, Western Dakota Energy Association, the North Dakota Ethanol Council, Ellingson Companies, J&M Truck Sales, ND Estate Services, Gevo, and Theraldson for being our sponsors tonight.
We may do this again, and thank you, sponsors, for making it happen.
This is Mark Wagner with ND Estate Services. Mainly, my job here is to help educate families on